Over the last years, there have been changes in both the equipment and the prices. The main structure of the three setups still remains. Since May 2024, there can be several sources, varying in price and features. Why reference setups? I've explained it earlier in my videos on my reference setups. If you have heard this before, you can easily skip to the next chapter in the timeline. If not, let me explain. A reviewer needs a fixed setup of equipment to anchor his findings. At least I do. It is therefore important to limit changes in these setups to the bare minimum, for it can make comparisons to earlier reviews difficult. At the same time, you need references that are relevant, and especially digital audio technology is still improving rapidly. To be clear, the gear I use certainly is amongst the best I could find in its price category, but it is picked also to be practical for me to work with. To make comparisons easier. Since I work from home, space is at a premium. Money too, by the way. In my profession, it is impossible to have a series of setups stepping up in, say, 10 steps from low end to high end. So I have to go about this cleverly. This is done by using equipment in more than one setup, like the subwoofer in setup 3, that is more expensive than would be reasonable. But it does give a good impression of what adding a cheaper sub would do to this setup. Still, I am very careful when replacing equipment, not to lose my reference. Another use of reference gear is as absolute standard. That is why I have the Grim Audio Mewtwo digital music player. It comes very, very close to being free of digital aberrations. That enables me to judge recordings I use with a large certainty. It is important to know if a recording doesn't sound good because the recording quality is poor or the device on the test isn't able to reproduce it correctly. The studio I record my videos in is in the attic, where also 2 of my 3 reference setups are situated. The machine room is situated next to the studio. Downstairs in the living room, the third group of setups have its place. Time to go to the setup description, starting at the low end. Links to the equipment mentioned in this video are in the description below this video on YouTube. In setup 3, the amplification is done by the steel-grade NAD C316 BEE. This Class A B amp isn't the most powerful, but combined with the right loudspeakers, it surely sounds great. There now is an MK2 edition out. I still use what now could be called the MK1. The loudspeakers are the Dali Oberon 1s that are very friendly loudspeakers, placed on target loudspeaker stands from the 80s, but last year I replaced the spikes with the Stack Audio OVA 50 isolators. The REL T5 subwoofer can add deep lows to them if the budget is available. It is connected to the loudspeaker terminals of the NAD using the REL supplied cable. The Veeam Pro Plus with iFi iPower 2 power supply provides the streaming. It is versatile, supports most streaming services, and with the iFi iPower power supply sounds quite good for the money. I use it mainly as Roon endpoint, but it can be used with its own app instead. In the description you find links to the reviews of the products I mention here. Connection to the network is made over Wi-Fi to a nearby TP-Link Deco XE75 access point that is part of a 3-station mesh network, 1 on each floor. A complete network oversight is given later on. Alternatively, I could use a Catch 6 patch cable to the Uptone Audio Ether Regen switch in setup 2. Over which later on more. Setup 3 is located in the studio on the 3rd floor and the equipment is housed in a target rack from the 80s. All cabling is what came with the equipment. Loudspeaker cable was simple lamp cord. This setup's total price is €2,049 without the subwoofer, or €2,948 including this sub. The rail is in a higher class, but that makes it possible to use it in my setup too as well. A more matching DALI sub C8 cost €450 less and would add up to €2,495. All prices in this video are including 21% VAT, the European sales tax. In for instance the US prices are excluding sales tax, which would mean €2,162, approximately $2,285. Keep that in mind when comparing prices. Don't be mistaken, this is a very musical setup that has impressed many people it was demonstrated to. Setup 2 knows 3 sub-levels, 2C, 2B and 2A. They use the same amplifier, loudspeakers, subwoofer, network switch and cabling. Only the digital front end differs. The Arcam Radia A25 Class G amplifier drives the Acoustic Energy Radiance 1 loudspeakers connected over Kimber 4PR loudspeaker cable. They are supported by the REL T5 subwoofer that is connected to the loudspeaker terminals on the Arcam using the cable that came with the sub. The 3 versions of Setup 2 are placed in the studio at the 3rd floor, and the loudspeakers switch places with those in Setup 3 using the same 80s target loudspeaker stands on Stack Audio over 50 isolators. The network switch is the Optron Audio Ether Regen with the discontinued Optron Audio UltraCaps 1.2 power supply. The equipment is also housed in a target rack from the 80s. The digital front end here is the Bluesound Node 2i, powered by the PD Creative linear power supply. It is connected to the amp over Siltec London RCA cables and to the switch over a Cat6 patch cable. The Node already has 2 later iterations, but the sound differences were rather small, so I kept it 2i. Without the subwoofer, but including the switch, rack, stands and isolators, it will set you back €5,278, including the sub is €6,177, including VAT. This is a very good sounding setup, and the use of monitor loudspeakers combined with a sub makes it easier to place. If you use my loudspeaker placement system, first place the subwoofer using the subwoofer placement video and then place the main speakers following the advice for the mid-range placement. In this setup, the Eversolo DMP A6 Master Edition with Beatnik LPS A6 linear power supply is the source. It again is connected to the amp over Siltec London RCA cables and to the switch over a Cat6 patch cable. Compared to Setup 2C, there's more resolution. The stereo image is a step deeper and wider, focusing is better and the microdynamics are clearly better. The Eversolo is enormously popular on the web and not without reason. But the user interface has a relatively steep learning curve. Excluding the sub, but including the switch, stands, cabling and isolators, it adds up to €6,493. Including the sub, it is €7,392, including VAT. Here the digital source is the Volumio Motivo. The Motivo sounds great in its class and also has a very nice touchscreen plus all Volumio software options. The user interface on both the built-in screen and on a smartphone or tablet is rather easy to get used to. Sound-wise, it offers rather good detail against a, for this price class, unusually black background. There also is royal spaciousness while maintaining focus. Sibilance is very well controlled too. Without subwoofer, the price is €7,600. With sub, which you want, it is almost €8,500, including VAT. Setup 1 went from 1 variant to 2 a few years ago. This time a 3rd variant is introduced. Between the old 1B and 1A there is now a 3rd level, the new 1B. The old 1B now has become 1C. They share a very high quality amplifier and speakers and are located in the living room on the ground floor. In the bass setup, the Air Acoustics AX520 amplifier drives the PMC FAC 12 signature loudspeakers on Stack Audio OVA 17 isolators and connected over AudioQuest Robinhood Zero loudspeaker cable. The PSI Audio AVAA active bass trap provide measures against room modes. The network connection comes from the Zixel GS1900-10 HP switch. A complete network oversight is given later on. The equipment is placed in a Creative Trend 3-3 rack. The amp is placed on Stack Audio OVA equipment isolators. The digital source here is a Magna Mana Ultra MK 3.5 Farad streamer, now running Gen 2 player. It is connected over I2S using a short 4K UHD 12 HDMI cable to the Holo Audio Cyan 2 DAC. That in turn is connected to the amp over Grim Audio SQM XLR cables. It is connected to the Zixel switch over the Network Acoustics Eno 2 system Ethernet filter. This setup is, as a setup, out of balance since the amp and speakers are clearly of a higher quality. But it is impossible to have a reference setup in about any class, and this setup has proven to let me judge any digital source between the Holo Audio Magna combination and the Grim Audio Mu 2 I use in setup 1A. Setup 1C adds up to 62,217 euros, but this front end would combine great with a 5,000 euro amp and speakers of around the same price. That would add up to a setup price of a bit over 20,000 euros. In 1B the source is the very good sounding Brooklyn Bridge 2, which is a Roon server, Roon endpoint, analog preamp and a DAC. It contains an Intel i5 processor and a linear power supply. It is the only gear you need to play music unless you also want to play vinyl. In that case you can connect a turntable with MD cartridge to the Mytek. In my review I said, especially deep lows have a very good texture. Sibilance is well controlled too. The stereo image is very wide and deep with instruments and voices well in focus. The sound is clearly less clinical than the Chord Hugo for instance. It is connected to the Air amp over Grim Audio TPR RCA cables. Like in 1C, the network connection is over the Network Acoustics Eno 2 system. The total adds up to 64,240 euros including VAT, but like with setup 1C, a more realistic amp and speakers would give a total price of under 30,000 euros. In 1A the digital source is the astonishing Grim Audio Mu 2 Roon server and player. It, like the Mytek Brooklyn Bridge 2, has a Roon server aboard, and it has a brilliant FPGA DAC integrated. It also has a very high quality analog preamp integrated. Since it has no digital outputs, I can't use it to review other DACs. The Network Acoustics Muon Pro network filter only has limited effect on the sound quality of the Grim player, since it has extremely good de-jittering circuit, but since it's beneficiary to other streamers, I keep it in setup 1A for fair comparison. This setup has an extremely high resolution. Sounds not digital at all, or, as I described earlier, it sounds like a studio tape recorder at 38 cm per second, 15 inches per second for mids and highs, and like a high quality digital recorder for the lows, the best of both worlds. It therefore is my absolute reference. Last year I explained why. I now know that the original release of Famous Blue Raincoat can sound clean without sharp sibilance, of which several people supposedly in the know say it's in the recording. Not so. The same goes for Urk by the Nits. Maddox and Englishman by Joe Cocker and Atom Heart Mother by Pink Floyd suddenly sound musical and open. Price increases over the year have led to a total price of €82,444. For now, every top-end digital player will be judged against this formidable setup. I don't use the Roon server in the Grim. It's Intel i3 based, which is sufficient for somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 albums, while I have 2.5 times that amount. That calls for an i7 based server, so I use the i7 based small green computer sonic transporter i7 CDR as Roon server. It is the power of Roon that the Grim player can just as easily work with an external Roon server. The Mewtwo, like the Air Amp, is placed on Stack Audio OVA equipment isolators. It might all be a bit much, so I made an overview again. Setup 3 uses the Beam Pro Plus streamer with iFi iPower 2 power supply, the NAD C316 BEE amplifier and the DALI Oberon 1 loudspeakers. Optionally, the REL T5 subwoofer can be used. Setup 2C uses the Blue Sound Notes 2i streamer with the PD Creative power supply, the ACAM Radia A25 amplifier, the Acoustic Energy Radiance 1 loudspeakers and the REL T5 subwoofer. Setup 2B uses the Episolo DMP A6 Master Edition with Beatnik LPS A6 linear power supply in combination with the same ARCAM amp, Acoustic Energy loudspeakers and REL sub. In Setup 2A, the front end is the Volumio Motivo. Amp, speakers and sub again are the same. Setup 1C uses the Magna Mano Ultra MK 3.5 Farad streamer and Holo Audio Cyan 2 DAC. The amp is the Air Acoustics AX520 and the speakers are the PMC FAC12 signature. Set 1B has the Mytek Brooklyn Bridge 2 digital player and analog preamp while using the Air amp and PMC loudspeakers. Finally, Setup 1A has the Grim Audio Mewtwo preamp, Roon player, Roon server, scaler and DAC, which is combined with the Air amp and PMC loudspeakers. Since I work on both the ground floor and the third floor, there is a comprehensive network setup. On the third floor, in the machine room, we find a Netgear ProSafe GS418 TPP switch that, using fiber optics, is connected to the Uptone Audio Ether Regen switch with UltraCap's Ultimate 1.2 power supply in the studio and provides the network to Setup 2 and 3. It is also connected to the Zixel GS1900-10 HP switch downstairs over a fiber optic connection. From the Zixel there is a Cat6 patch cable to the Zixel ODDO modem, which provides internet access via a Nokia media converter to the 1 gigabit up and down fiber internet connection. It is also connected to a TP-Link Deco XE75 Wi-Fi mesh network with one access point per floor. The small green computer sonic transporter i7 CDR running Roon server, Minim server and Audivana core server is also connected to the Zixel switch via a patch cable. In the machine room, the Roon Nucleus 1 provides the music to the Roon players in Setup 2 and 3. Since financially it's a better fit with these setups. It will not sound better or worse than a Sonic Transporter i7 CDR. The Nucleus 1 is connected directly to the Netgear switch over a Cat6 patch cable. Also placed in the machine room is a Synology 18-drive NAS setup that stores production files, photo files and video files and several backups, including 2 complete backups of my music files. I also have off-site backups of all my files except for the video production files, since that's simply too much data. On the other side of the spectrum I use a €100 single-drive NAS, the Synology DS119J. It holds a 3 TB drive filled with music, which will be more than the average user will have and thus is more realistic for domestic use. It is used for testing DNA players and players that use a Samba share. But I can also use the big NAS or Sonic Transporter as well. The advantage of using a small NAS like this is that it consumes less power than a computer and can do all kinds of other things like backups and make files available to, for instance, your smartphone on the road. But a cheap NAS is also slower, of course. The Roon Nucleus 1 server also shares its volume holding the music as Samba share, so that alternatively can be used for self-indexing streamers like those by Sonos, Bluesound and Auralic. It often helps to look at somewhat complex matters with graphics. That was the motivation for making and maintaining this series of videos. The complexity at the same time is the versatility, although I do understand it can be hard to imagine what setup variant leads to what sound quality. Talking about quality, although it looks very convenient for you to publish absolute quality ratings, things in audio aren't that simple. If you want to know a bit more about this, you could watch my video Q&A which device is better. Please let me know when things are not clear, but also realize that it's not always a matter of better or worse. There has to be a match with your requirements, wishes and other equipment. Please see the description below this video on YouTube for links to the videos and reviews on equipment mentioned here. And on that bombshell we come to the end of this video. There will be new videos soon, so subscribe to my channel or follow me on Patreon, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram or TikTok to stay up to date on new videos. Patreon and YouTube Premium subscribers see my videos a week earlier and ad-free. Help me reach even more people by giving this video thumbs up or link to this video on the social media. It would be greatly appreciated. A big thank you to the viewers who support this channel financially. It keeps me independent and allows me to improve the channel further. If that makes you want to support my work too, the links are in the description below this video on YouTube. I'm Hans Beekhuizen. Thank you for watching and see you next week. And whatever you do, enjoy the music.